Guten Morgen. That's good morning in German. Thanks for checking in today. And we got some new reading. Today is day 22, Monday, April 20th. Hope you had a good Sunday yesterday. Beautiful day. It wasn't awesome to be outside. Can't wait for more warmer weather to come. All right, we're going to be reading Psalms 61 through 63 today, and also Acts 15 through 16. Yesterday's reading, I popped out one of the verses there, Psalms 59, verses 9 and 10, the beginning part of verse 10. You are my strength, I watch for you. God, my fortress, my God on whom I can rely. Again, another good psalm about relying on God's strength. Now, Psalm 61 through 63, actually Psalm 61 through 64, are all psalms kind of linked together by similar themes. Evidently, there's an enemy that's prowling around, ready to invade the city, or there's something there's some danger that's surrounding this kingdom, these people, and the king, and so it's a prayer for God's deliverance and God's presence during this time. They're all very similar. They all sound very similar, but the key is that they're begging God or asking God and looking to God to help them through this difficult time. I want you to note when you read through the next one, Psalm 61, 62, and 63, note how they view God, note what they ask for, and note what they long for when you read through those, okay? In Acts 15 in the New Testament, we have this is a really important chapter in the life of the church. This is a chapter of controversy. This is the first big church controversy that the early church had, and it was over circumcision. Evidently, there were some Jewish Christians that were demanding that a non-Jewish person, when they became a Christian, also needed to be circumcised as well, according to the Old Testament law. And so when there was a big debate about it, they gathered all the church leaders in Jerusalem. So Peter and John and James and Silas and Barnabas, everybody went to Jerusalem in order to discuss this. And they had the elders of the church there, and so they talked about this and discussed. And Peter gave a really good defense and simply said, or the disciples gave a really good defense, saying, you know what? You're telling these people that they got to go back to the law, but yet we didn't get the law right either. It didn't help us at all. So why are we making them go back? Jesus came and we're saved by grace through faith in him. And so they made that argument, and it stuck, and they all agreed, and they decided just to have the Gentiles kind of live up to three different rules. The first was don't eat meat sacrificed to idols. Even Christians didn't do that. Second thing was sexual morality, stay away from that. And in that Greek culture, it was really bad. And so that carried over from the Old Testament law, carried over to Christians as well, that we need to be careful about that area of our life. And then finally, not to eat meat with blood in it. That was an Old Testament law that they insisted upon too. So a lot of these few requirements may have derived from the requirements that were given for Gentiles that lived among the Israelite people. You can look those up in Leviticus 17 and 18 in the Old Testament of the Bible. You know, they didn't require them to do absolutely everything, but they had requested that they do certain things. And it kind of sounds like that. Some of the Jewish traditions were that these are some of the things that God told Noah to stay away from, that these are laws given to Noah prior to the Ten Commandments. And so anyways, they agreed on these laws, and so they wrote a letter to be shared with the Gentile churches, and the church is really excited about that. Well, then it says that Paul wanted to go and visit some of the churches that he had planted, him and Barnabas agreed, he says, but he wanted to take John Mark with him. And Paul says, no, I'm not going to take him with me. He abandoned us at another trip that they were on. And it says that there's a great argument that came about, and they split. Barnabas took off with Mark, and Paul took off with Silas. And so here, chapter 15 is controversy with the church and then individual controversy. And now these two really close people are now divided and going off in their own direction. So that's kind of interesting. It's good to note that later on we see that Mark and Paul do make up. And for whatever reason, we don't know what happened. If he left him hanging, we just don't know. It just says that Paul was upset about it. All right, and then chapter 16. On one of their stops, they met a young man named Timothy. His mom was Jewish and his dad was Greek. And Paul was so impressed by him that he wanted him to come on with his next missionary trip. Now, then it says that he had him circumcised. You're going like, we just talked about this in the chapter before. Why did he make him get circumcised? Well, the key was that if he wasn't, this would have kept Timothy from interacting with a lot of Jewish people that weren't Christian yet. They didn't interact with Gentile people that were circumcised. So this was kind of a missionary thing to open the door so that he would have a chance to share with Jewish people. It's just kind of confusing, isn't it, when you see that show up? But Timothy is the one that later on that Paul writes 2 letters to, 1st and 2nd Timothy, as he was a leader in the church at Ephesus. All right, so another interesting thing that happens, you notice, is that the Holy Spirit kept them from a couple different times. And they wanted to go in a certain direction, and the Spirit kept them, or they wouldn't allow them into a city. And you're going like, what's going on? Well, then we see that Paul has a vision of a man from Macedonia begging him to come over. Macedonia was on the other side of the Aegean Sea, and so that was where they decided where the Lord wanted them to go. And so they get in the ship and they start to travel over there, and along the way they're sharing the gospel. First person that was converted in that area was Lydia. She was a maker of purple cloth. Purple cloth was royal garments, and so she might have been a seamstress for fancy rich people. We don't know. But anyways, that's her first conversion. And then there's this really interesting story where Paul and Silas are preaching, and there is a young girl kind of following after them, saying, these people are showing you the way to be saved. And she had a spirit of future telling the future. Well, she was annoying Paul enough that he turned around and cast that spirit out of her. Well, her owners got very upset and talked with the magistrates and said these guys are troublemakers. So they threw them in jail. They flogged them, beat them, and there they're sitting bloodied, laying in their jail cell. Well, about midnight, they were singing some songs, and all of a sudden there's a great big earthquake, and the jail cells pop open. Well, the jailer freaks out, wakes up, runs in, sees the jail cells open, and then decides he's going to kill himself because all the prisoners are... Well, Paul and Silas says, no, we're still here. And so this jailer comes and asks him, I want to know what it means to be saved. And so they were able to share Jesus with him and his family, and they all were converted and became Christians and were baptized. It's a pretty cool story. And in the meantime, they were decided the authorities were going to let Paul and Silas go, and Paul says, wait a minute. He says, you're going to let us go, and yet you beat us, and you flogged us, and we're Roman citizens. And the leaders went, whoa, we didn't know you were Roman citizens. See, Roman citizens had due process. And to be thrown in the jail like that was a no-no. And so the magistrates were scared of what they had done. Now, Paul uses his Roman citizenship to get himself all the way to Rome. We're going to learn about that in the next few weeks. All right, that's it for today. Blessings on your day. Blessings on your reading. And I'll talk with you tomorrow.